The alien's tentacles whipped through the air with impossible speed. Jack Reynolds dropped to one knee, his weathered face locked in concentration rather than fear. Blood trickled from a gash above his eye, but his hands remained perfectly steady. Behind him lay three fallen comrades. Ahead stood the massive creature, 9 feet tall, armored hide glistening with bioluminescent patterns, mandibles clicking in anticipation of the kill. "Not today," Jack whispered. The creature lunged. Jack didn't retreat. Instead, he stepped forward into the attack. His right hand shot out, fingers pressing against a precise point where the alien's chest plates met. He didn't strike. He redirected. A subtle shift of weight, a minimal touch that conveyed maximum force. The air around them shimmered, then compressed. A plume of mist erupted as moisture in the atmosphere instantly condensed. Where the alien had stood, only vapor remained. The displacement field had worked. The creature wasn't dead, just relocated. Jack collapsed to his knees, the exertion of the technique draining his last reserves. The warning lights of the facility flashed red overhead as the evacuation siren wailed. "Commander Reynolds!" The voice crackled through his earpiece. "Did you contain the specimen?" Jack coughed, the taste of copper filling his mouth. "Contained, not killed. Tell the science team it's in Sector 7 unconscious. And sir, Beroy, we're going to need body bags for Hendricks and Santos." "Understood. Medical is en route." "Well done, Commander." Jack closed his eyes, feeling the familiar hollowness that followed survival when others hadn't made it. "No, sir. Not well done at all." The Montana morning painted the Bridger Mountains gold. Jack Reynolds wiped frost from the security booth window at the northern gateway of the Interstellar Research Center. His uniform, a standard-issue navy blue with the IRC logo, hung loosely on his still muscular frame. At 58, he carried himself with the rigid posture of a lifetime soldier, though the job title on his badge read simply Security Personnel. The overnight shift was ending, and the day crew filtered through the checkpoint. Dr. Elena Voss, head of xenobiology, tapped her access card against the reader without looking up from her tablet. "Morning, Jack," she said, her attention fixed on research data. "Morning, Doctor." Jack's voice carried the gravelly texture of too many deployments in too many hostile environments. "Any progress with those soil samples from Europa?" Dr. Voss glanced up, mild surprise crossing her features. Most security staff didn't bother with scientific details. "Actually, yes. Found bacterial organisms that metabolize in temperatures we thought would prohibit life. Fascinating stuff." Jack nodded. "Life finds a way. Always has." The doctor offered a genuine smile before hurrying toward her lab. Jack watched her go, then returned to his logbook. Most of the IRC staff viewed him as background furniture. The aging security guard who checked IDs and monitored cameras. None knew he'd once commanded elite SEAL teams, or that he held Level 5 certification in Earth's Apex Survival Program. Fewer still knew why he'd left that life behind. Jack's fingers unconsciously traced the scar that ran from his left ear down his neck, a souvenir from his final mission, the one that had cost him his rank and reputation. A soft beep from the console interrupted his thoughts. Jack's eyes narrowed as he scanned the incoming alert. Atmospheric disturbance detected in the upper ionosphere. Pattern matched previous extraterrestrial contact protocols. His hand hovered over the facility-wide alarm for only a fraction of a second before pressing it. The calm security professional vanished, replaced by the commander who had led men through 3 wars. Jack's voice rang through the intercom, steady and authoritative. "Attention all IRC personnel. This is a Code Indigo alert. Unscheduled extraterrestrial approach detected. This is not a drill. All staff report to designated safety zones. First contact protocol is now active." He grabbed the emergency rifle from beneath the console, a weapon he'd prayed he'd never need to use, and headed for the facility's roof. The sky above Montana had taken on an unusual purple tinge, clouds swirling in unnatural patterns. Jack had seen this phenomenon only once before 20 years ago, during a classified operation that officially never happened. Dr. Richard Keller, the IRC director, burst through the door to the observation deck. His lab coat flapped in the increasing wind. "Reynolds, what the hell are you doing up here? Security protocol says you should be at the bunker entrance." Jack didn't lower his rifle or take his eyes off the sky. "With respect, sir, I've seen this before. If it's who I think it is, they'll bypass your bunker like it's made of paper. Keller's mouth opened to argue, but the words died as a massive shadow fell across the facility. A ship, if you could call it that, materialized through the cloud cover. No metal hull or engines. Instead, it resembled a living organism, translucent in places, opaque in others. Nearly a kilometer in length, it pulsed with internal light as it descended. "My God," Keller whispered. Jack remained silent, his weathered face betraying no emotion. But inside, memories flooded back. A classified desert operation, first contact with beings beyond human comprehension, and the knowledge that had been buried afterward. The ship hovered 300 feet above the facility's main landing pad. No landing gear extended, it simply stopped in midair. A section of its underside liquefied, forming a perfect cylinder of shimmering material that stretched down to touch the concrete. Jack addressed Keller without turning. "Sir, I recommend you gather whatever welcome committee you've prepared for this eventuality. And sir, leave the military attachés behind. These visitors don't respond well to obvious weapons." Keller stared at him. "How could you possibly know that?" Jack finally turned to meeting the director's gaze with eyes that had seen too much. "Because 20 years ago I made that mistake. Let's not repeat it." The delegation that assembled on the landing pad represented Earth's finest scientific minds, along with a handful of diplomats pulled from the UN's extraterrestrial contact contingency team. Jack stood at the rear, his security uniform exchanged for a simple black suit. Keller's concession to Jack's insistence that he be present. The shimmering cylinder pulsed, and figures began to descend. Not walking, but floating downward as if gravity were optional. 5 beings, each different from the last. The leader stood nearly 7 feet tall, with skin like polished obsidian that reflected the Montana sunlight in prismatic patterns. Its forearms moved with liquid grace, and its face featured compound eyes that shifted color with each blink. Behind it came what appeared to be a serpentine figure, body covered in iridescent scales. A stocky rock-like being whose footsteps left small cracks in the concrete. A slender, almost human-looking entity whose skin emitted a soft blue glow. And finally, a robed figure whose face remained hidden beneath a hood. Jack felt his pulse quicken at the sight of the hooded one. He knew who hid beneath that ceremonial covering. Dr. Keller stepped forward, arms raised in the universal gesture of peaceful greeting. "On behalf of humanity and Earth, welcome to our world. I am Dr. Richard Keller, director of this research facility." The obsidian leader tilted its head, compound eyes shifting to deep purple. When it spoke, the sound didn't come from its mouth, but seemed to manifest directly in the minds of all present. We are the Galactic Alliance. I am High Arbiter Jen. We have observed your world for many cycles. The time has come for formal assessment." Jack kept his breathing steady, focusing on the hooded figure who had drifted slightly away from the main group. As if sensing his attention, the figure turned and Jack saw a flash of golden eyes beneath the hood. Eyes he recognized. Keller continued the formal exchange, offering Earth's friendship and cooperation. The diplomatic dance proceeded smoothly until High Arbiter Jen gestured toward the hooded figure. "Judge Renox will oversee the evaluation process. His word is final in all matters regarding potential member worlds." The hooded figure stepped forward and lowered its covering. Jack's suspicions were confirmed. Renox stood revealed, tall and imperious with scaled features that resembled a terrestrial reptile but with unsettling symmetry and golden eyes that held ancient intelligence. "Director Keller," Renox's voice resonated with authority, "your world stands at a crossroads. For too long, Earth has been classified as a death world, a planet whose very environment breeds violence and aggression in its dominant species." Murmurs rippled through the Earth delegation. Deathworld. The classification wasn't completely unknown to top scientists, but hearing it pronounced so formally sent a chill through the assembly. Renox continued, "However, recent observations suggest humanity may have evolved beyond its predatory origins. The Alliance Council has agreed to consider Earth for provisional membership pending evaluation." Keller's diplomatic smile couldn't hide his surprise. "This is unexpected but welcome news. What does this evaluation entail?" Renox's golden gaze swept across the gathered humans, then stopped abruptly when it reached Jack. Recognition flashed between them, a moment of tension that only Jack seemed to notice. One representative of Earth must attend the Interstellar Academy for a full evaluation cycle. There they will demonstrate whether humans possess the temperament and self-control necessary for membership in the galactic community. The High Arbiter added, "Choose wisely, Director. This representative will carry the future of your entire species on their shoulders." Rennox's eyes remained fixed on Jack. Perhaps someone with experience in first contact situations would be appropriate. Jack felt the weight of destiny settling onto his shoulders. The classified incident from 20 years ago had come full circle. He stepped forward, drawing surprised glances from the Earth delegation. "Judge Rennox." Jack's voice carried the calm authority of a man who had faced death countless times. "I believe we've met before." Golden eyes narrowed. "Indeed, Commander Reynolds. In the Sahara, 20 years ago by your calendar." The Earth delegation's surprise turned to shock. Director Keller sputtered, "Reynolds, you're a security guard. What is he talking about?" Rennox answered before Jack could. "This human prevented what could have been a disastrous first contact scenario. When our scout ship crashed and your Sahara Desert military forces surrounded it, Commander Reynolds disobeyed direct orders to attack, choosing instead to establish communication." Jack's jaw tightened at the memory. "I lost my command for that decision, and yet saved countless lives on both sides," Rennox countered. The Obsidian leader, High Arbiter Jen, studied Jack with new interest. "Perhaps we have found Earth's representative already." Director Keller stepped between them, diplomatic training reasserting itself. "This is a momentous decision that requires careful consideration. We should consult with global leadership before—" "No." Jack's interruption was quiet but firm. "With respect, Director, we don't have that luxury. I know how the Alliance works. This is a one-time offer." He turned to Rennox, meeting those ancient golden eyes without flinching. "What exactly would my role be at this academy?" Rennox's mouth formed what might have been a smile on a human face. "You would be a student, Commander Reynolds. At your age, quite possibly the oldest freshman in Academy history. You would study alongside representatives from 100 different worlds, demonstrate human adaptability and restraint, and above all, prove that Deathworlders can overcome their violent nature. And if I fell, then Earth remains classified as a Deathworld ineligible for Alliance protection or knowledge sharing." Rennox paused. "There are many species who view Deathworlds as resources to be harvested or subjugated for their own safety." The implication hung heavy in the Montana air. Jack understood the stakes immediately. This wasn't just about diplomatic relations. It was about humanity's survival in a universe more complex and dangerous than anyone had imagined. "How long do we have to decide?" Keller asked. "Earth has 72 hours to prepare its representative," the High Arbiter announced. "Then we depart." As the delegation dispersed into hurried conferences, Jack remained standing before Rennox. The alien judge studied him with those unnerving golden eyes. "You've aged, Commander," Rennox observed. Jack's weathered face remained impassive. "That's what humans do. Yet you carry your wounds like badges rather than burdens. Interesting." Rennox tilted his head. "You should know there are those in the Alliance who oppose Earth's inclusion. They believe humans are too unpredictable, too violent at their core." "And what do you believe, Judge?" Rennox considered this. "I believe that any species capable of producing individuals who choose peace when every instinct screams for war deserves a chance to prove itself." His golden eyes narrowed. "But the choice must be yours, Commander. This evaluation will test you in ways you cannot imagine." Jack looked past the alien delegation to the Montana mountains he'd called home since leaving the service. His quiet life of anonymity as a security guard suddenly seemed very distant. "I stopped being a commander a long time ago," Jack said quietly. "These days I'm just a man doing his job." "Perhaps," Rennox replied, "but Earth needs its commander once more." 3 hours later, Jack sat alone in the IRC's secure briefing room, surrounded by screens displaying everything humanity knew about the Galactic Alliance, which wasn't much. The room's door hissed open, and Director Keller entered, followed by a team of government officials who had arrived via emergency transport. "Reynolds," Keller began, "this is Defense Secretary Blackwell and UN Special Envoy Chen. They have questions about your history with these aliens." Jack leaned back in his chair, studying the newcomers. Bureaucrats and politicians. People who made decisions from the safety of offices thousands of miles from consequence. Secretary Blackwell, a stern woman with steel gray hair, wasted no time. 20 years ago, you were involved in a classified operation in the Sahara Desert, an operation that ended with you disobeying direct orders and being removed from command of your SEAL team. Now, we learn this incident involved extraterrestrial contact that was kept from the highest levels of government. Explain yourself. Jack's gaze remained steady. Operation Sandstorm, officially a counterterrorism mission targeting extremist cells. My team was dispatched to investigate an unidentified craft that satellite imagery couldn't properly resolve. When we arrived, we found a downed ship unlike anything human technology could produce. He paused, memories surfacing of that fateful night. We established a perimeter. Standing orders were to eliminate any potential biological threat and secure the craft for retrieval. But what emerged wasn't hostile, just injured and trying to communicate. So you disobeyed a direct order, Blackwell pressed. Jack's eyes hardened. I was ordered to execute wounded non-hostile sentients attempting peaceful communication. Yes, I disobeyed that order. Envoy Chen leaned forward. And in exchange for your mercy, you were court-martialed. Not officially, too sensitive. I was quietly relieved of command given an honorable discharge for medical reasons after suffering injuries during the extraction. The incident was buried, the team separated and reassigned. Keller paced the room. And these aliens, this Judge Renox, was there, Jack nodded. Rennox was one of the survivors I protected. Their ship was on a scientific mission that suffered technical failure. They were rescued within hours by a larger vessel. Before they left, Renox told me humanity would be watched and one day judged. Judged, Secretary Blackwell repeated. And now they're back offering membership in some galactic community with you as Earth's representative. Seems that way. Blackwell's eyes narrowed. Why you? You're a disgraced former commander working security at a research facility. Surely Earth has more suitable representatives. Diplomats, scientists, current military leaders. Jack didn't flinch under her scrutiny. Because I'm what they're looking for. A Deathworlder who chose restraint over violence when it mattered. They're not testing our technology or scientific achievements. They're testing our capacity to overcome our nature. The room fell silent as the implications settled. Finally, Envoy Chen spoke. Director Keller, we need to contact the UN Security Council and the President immediately. This decision requires global consensus. Jack stood his chair, scraping against the floor. With respect, there isn't time for committees and consultations. You heard them, 72 hours. If we miss this opportunity, Earth remains vulnerable to species who view us as potential threats to be eliminated or resources to be harvested. And you're volunteering, Blackwell asked incredulously. Jack met her gaze without wavering. I'm 58 years old. I've fought in 3 wars. I've killed and watched good men die. If there's a chance I can ensure humanity's place in this larger community without more bloodshed, then yes, I'm volunteering. Director Keller studied Jack with new respect. Even if it means never returning to Earth. The question hung heavy in the air. Jack hadn't considered that possibility, though it made sense. This wasn't a short-term assignment. If that's what it takes, he answered quietly. Blackwell looked ready to object further, but Envoy Chen raised a hand. I think we should consider Commander Reynolds' offer seriously. If these aliens specifically recognized him, that connection might be valuable. Keller nodded slowly. I agree, but we need someone who knows what they're doing. Reynolds who could prepare you for this kind of mission in the time we have. Jack didn't hesitate. Captain Frank Harlow, my former instructor at the Apex Survival Program. If anyone can get me ready in 72 hours, it's him. The helicopter touched down on a remote Montana plateau just as the sun began to set. Jack stepped out, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, and faced the sprawling compound that few civilians knew existed. The Apex Survival Training Facility, where Earth's most elite soldiers learn to survive environments that killed ordinary humans within hours. A lone figure waited on the landing pad, ramrod straight despite his advanced age. Captain Frank Harlow, 78 years old and still imposing. His weathered face had earned each of its deep lines through decades of service from Korea to the Gulf War. His silver hair was cut in the same military style he had worn for 50 years. Frank didn't offer a handshake as Jack approached. Instead, he looked his former student up and down with piercing blue eyes that missed nothing. Reynolds, he said simply, didn't expect to see you again. Likewise, Captain. It's just Frank now, retired 10 years ago. Jack nodded. So they told me. Also told me you still run training exercises here as a consultant. A ghost of a smile crossed Frank's face. Old habits. Come on, they briefed me on the situation. We don't have much time. They walked in silence toward the main building, two old warriors who understood that words were often unnecessary. Inside, Frank led Jack to a secure briefing room. The walls were covered with topographical maps and survival scenarios. Frank closed the door and faced his former student. Aliens, he said flatly. Should have seen that coming, I suppose. Space is just another hostile environment. Jack allowed himself a small smile. That's one way of looking at it. Frank's expression remained serious. Jack, I need to know, are you up for this? Physically, mentally, this isn't a security booth. You're talking about representing our entire species. That's why I'm here. I need your help to get ready. Frank studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. 3 days isn't much time, but you were always my best student. He pointed to a chair. Sit. Tell me everything about these aliens, this academy, and what you're walking into. For the next hour, Jack detailed everything he knew about the Galactic Alliance Judge Rennox and the Interstellar Academy. Frank listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a worn leather-bound notebook. So, Frank summarized when Jack finished, you'll be the oldest student at an academy filled with aliens who may view humans as dangerous predators. You need to demonstrate restraint and control while competing academically with species potentially thousands of years more advanced. All while political factions within this alliance debate whether Earth deserves to exist independently. Jack nodded. That about covers it. Frank leaned back, a familiar gleam entering his eyes. Reminds me of dropping you in the Arctic with nothing but a knife and fishing line. You made it out. Barely, Jack corrected. Lost 2 toes to frostbite. But you survived. Frank stood and moved to a wall safe. He entered a complex code and the door swung open. From inside, he withdrew a small metallic case. You know why they chose you, Jack? Because I disobeyed orders to kill Rennox and his team 20 years ago. Frank shook his head. That's part of it, but there's something deeper. He placed the case on the table between them. They didn't choose you for your successes. They chose you for your failures. Jack's expression hardened. Meaning, your last mission, the one that ended your career. Tell me about it. The request hit Jack like a physical blow. He rarely allowed himself to revisit that day. It's classified. Not anymore. Not with Earth's future at stake. Frank's voice softened slightly. I need to know if you've made peace with it. Jack's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to speak. Extraction operation. Terrorist cell had captured 3 American aid workers. My team was sent in to get them out. Intelligence was faulty. There were more hostiles than expected, and they were using... He paused, the words catching in his throat. They were using children as human shields. Frank remained silent, waiting. We had a clear shot at the leader. Taking him out would have collapsed their command structure, created enough chaos for us to extract the hostages. But there was a boy, couldn't have been more than 10, standing in front of him. Jack's hands clenched involuntarily. My second in command had the shot. I ordered him to stand down. He argued that 1 casualty was acceptable given the stakes. I disagreed. And while we argued, they spotted us. Firefight broke out. We got the hostages, but 2 of my men didn't make it. I took shrapnel in the neck and back. Jack's fingers traced the scar along his neck. The investigation concluded I hesitated at a critical moment, resulting in unnecessary American casualties. Frank opened the metal case, revealing a gleaming badge. Level 5 Apex Survival Certification, the highest honor bestowed by the program. Only a handful had ever been awarded. You know why I pushed you harder than the others? Why I subjected you to the most extreme training scenarios? Jack shook his head. Because I saw something in you that most soldiers never develop. The ability to carry the weight of impossible choices without breaking. Frank lifted the badge from its case. The displacement technique I taught you, the one that saved your life in that desert 20 years ago, it's not just about redirecting physical force. It's about channeling the force of will. He held out the badge. This isn't just a certification, Jack. It's a reminder that survival isn't always about fighting. Sometimes it's about knowing when not to fight. Jack stared at the badge memories flooding back of the grueling training that had forged him. I don't deserve this. Not after losing those men. That's exactly why you deserve it, Frank countered. And it's why these aliens chose you. They don't want a perfect soldier who follows orders blindly. They want someone who understands the cost of violence and chooses another path when possible. Frank placed the badge in Jack's palm. For the next 3 days, I'm going to push you harder than I ever have before. Not to make you stronger or faster. You're too old for that, and so am I. But to remind you of who you really are. Jack closed his fingers around the badge, feeling its weight. The physical embodiment of everything he'd fought to become, everything he'd lost, and perhaps everything humanity needed him to be now. When do we start? He asked. Frank's expression was grim. We already have. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of intensive training. Frank hadn't exaggerated. He pushed Jack to his absolute limits, not with physical conditioning, but with a series of increasingly complex ethical and tactical scenarios designed to test judgment under pressure. In the facility's holographic simulation chamber, Jack faced recreations of first contact scenarios, diplomatic crises, and cultural misunderstandings with fictional alien species. Frank observed from a control room, occasionally interjecting to raise the stakes or add unexpected complications. During one particularly grueling simulation, Jack found himself negotiating peace between two alien factions with fundamentally incompatible biologies. One breathed oxygen, the other found it toxic. The scenario kept escalating until violence seemed inevitable. There's no solution here, Jack argued through the comm system. Their basic needs are mutually exclusive. Frank's voice came back calm and measured. There's always a solution if you're willing to change the parameters of the problem. It took Jack 6 hours of simulated negotiation to broker a time-sharing arrangement for the contested territory, with each species occupying it during different phases of the planet's rotation. When the simulation finally ended, he emerged exhausted, but with a new perspective. Frank met him in the corridor, offering a canteen of water. Survival isn't about finding the perfect solution. It's about finding the solution everyone can live with. On the final day, they focused on the displacement technique, the near-mystical martial art Frank had developed by synthesizing ancient combat disciplines with modern physics. More meditation than fighting style, it required perfect body-mind harmony to redirect an opponent's force against themselves. In the facility's dojo, Jack and Frank moved through the forms together, two aging warriors finding balance between aggression and restraint. Remember, Frank instructed as they completed a complex sequence. The technique isn't about power, it's about precision. A finger's touch at exactly the right point can redirect more force than a sledgehammer blow. Jack nodded, wiping sweat from his brow, like turning a stream with a single stone. Exactly. Frank straightened his old joints, protesting audibly. You know, there's a reason they call it Earth a death world. Our predator heritage, Jack suggested. Partly, but it's more fundamental than that. Earth tests its inhabitants constantly, through climate, through natural disasters, through competition for resources. We evolved in an environment that tries to kill us daily. Frank moved to a viewing window that looked out over the Montana wilderness. Most species in this alliance of theirs probably evolved in more stable environments. They never had to develop our adaptability, our tenacity. You're saying our greatest weakness might be our strength. I'm saying that what they fear in us, our capacity for violence, is inextricably linked to what makes us special, our capacity to overcome, to endure, to find solutions where others see only problems. Frank turned back to face Jack, his expression solemn. They need to understand that humans don't choose peace because we're weak. We choose it because we've seen the alternative. As the sun set on the final day of training, Jack stood on the landing pad, duffel packed, awaiting the helicopter that would return him to the IRC facility. Frank stood beside him, both men watching the horizon turn crimson against the mountain peaks. You ready? Frank asked. Jack considered the question carefully. As ready as I can be. Remember your training. Remember who you are. Frank hesitated, then extended his hand. Earth couldn't ask for a better representative son. Jack took the offered hand, gripping it firmly. This wasn't just a goodbye between former instructor and student. It was a passing of the torch. Frank had prepared humanity's defenders for decades. Now Jack would carry that legacy to the stars. "I won't let you down," Jack promised. Frank's weathered face cracked into a rare smile. "You never have." The Galactic Alliance vessel hung above the IRC facility like a silent prophecy. The 72 hours had passed, and Jack stood on the landing pad alongside Director Keller and a small contingent of government officials. His possessions were minimal: a single duffel containing clothing Earth literature translated into digital format, and the Apex survival badge Frank had given him. Secretary Blackwell approached, extending a small device. "This contains encrypted data about Earth's current technological capabilities, political structures, and scientific knowledge. The President has authorized you to share it at your discretion if it will help secure our position." Jack accepted the device with a nod. "Thank you, Madam Secretary." "Commander Reynolds," she said formally, "you are hereby reinstated to your former rank and designated Earth's official envoy to the Galactic Alliance. Your service record has been amended to reflect the true nature of your actions during Operation Sandstorm and your final mission." The gesture wasn't lost on Jack. After 20 years of living with a tarnished legacy, this small vindication meant more than he would admit. The shimmering transport cylinder descended from the Alliance vessel, touching down on the concrete pad. Judge Rennox emerged first, golden eyes surveying the assembled humans. "Is Earth's representative prepared?" he inquired. Jack stepped forward. "I am." Rennox studied him with those unnerving eyes. "You understand that this journey may be one way, that success or failure you might never return to your homeworld." Jack glanced back at the Montana mountains he'd come to love, then faced Rennox squarely. "I understand." Director Keller stepped forward to make a formal statement, but Jack raised a hand to stop him. "No speech is necessary. This wasn't about politics or diplomacy anymore. It was about survival, humanity's oldest skill." Jack shouldered his duffel and moved toward the transport cylinder. As he reached the shimmering boundary, he paused and turned back. "If I don't come back," he said to Keller, "tell Frank he was right. Sometimes the hardest fights are the ones we choose not to have." With that, he stepped into the light. The sensation was unlike anything he'd experienced, not uncomfortable but profoundly alien. His body felt simultaneously weightless and heavy as the transport field enveloped him. Beside him, Rennox spoke softly. "The Interstellar Academy has existed for 10,000 years. In that time, no Deathworlder has ever been accepted as a student." Jack met the alien's gaze steadily. "Then I'd better not fail." The Montana landscape diminished beneath them as they ascended into the Alliance vessel. Earth, blue and vulnerable, filled the viewports. Jack had seen many beautiful things in his 58 years, but nothing compared to the sight of his home planet from space. "It looks so peaceful from up here," he murmured. "Most worlds do," Rennox replied, "until you look closer." The transport completed, Jack found himself in a vast chamber unlike anything human architecture could produce. The walls seemed alive, pulsing with subtle bioluminescence. Dozens of alien species moved through the space, some humanoid, others defying categorization. All activity ceased when Jack entered. Conversations in 100 different languages fell silent as every eye-ocular cluster and sensory apparatus turned toward him. Jack felt the weight of their collective gaze: curiosity, suspicion, and in some cases, open hostility. A tall, armored being with scaled skin pushed through the crowd. Its eyes narrowed as it regarded Jack, mandibles clicking in what might have been disgust. "So this is the Deathworlder," it said, voice amplified by some unseen technology. "Earth sends an elderly male as its champion. Perhaps they misunderstood the purpose of the Academy." Jack recognized the species from the briefings. Taurian, a warrior culture with political ambitions within the Alliance, known for their strength and aggressive territorial expansion. "I'm Jack Reynolds," he replied calmly, "Earth's representative." The Taurian's headplates flared in what might have been amusement or disdain. "I am Prince Krell of the Taurian Empire, heir to the Obsidian Throne. You stand in my path, Deathworlder." The confrontation had drawn an even larger crowd. Jack noticed smaller aliens shrinking back, clearly familiar with the Taurians' intimidation tactics. This was a test, not just of Jack, but of humanity's response to provocation. Jack didn't move, but neither did he escalate. "There's room for both of us to pass, Your Highness." Krell stepped closer, using his 7-foot height to loom over Jack. His armor plates began to glow with bioluminescent patterns, a threat display. You misunderstand. Your very presence in this academy offends. Earth is a savage world that breeds killers, not scholars. From the crowd, a smaller alien, reptilian with iridescent scales, Umestios watched with wide eyes. Others whispered in languages Jack couldn't understand, but the sentiment was clear they expected violence. Jack thought of Frank's teaching. The displacement technique wasn't just physical, it applied to confrontation itself. Redirect, don't resist. I'm not here to confirm your preconceptions, Prince Krell. Jack said, his voice level and controlled. I'm here to learn, same as you. Krell's mandibles clicked faster, a sign of agitation. We are nothing alike human. I am royalty trained from birth for greatness. You are a curiosity, a primitive, allowed in through Renox's misplaced mercy. The tension in the chamber grew palpable. Jack could feel Renox watching from a distance, deliberately not intervening. This was already part of the test. Jack met Krell's gaze without flinching. In my experience, those who are truly great rarely need to announce it. A ripple of reaction passed through the watching crowd, surprise and from some barely concealed amusement. Krell's armor plates flashed bright red, a clear indication of anger. Before the situation could escalate further, a melodic tone resonated through the chamber. A holographic display materialized, showing the ship's approach to a massive space station, a structure so vast it defied human comprehension. It resembled a geometric snowflake with crystalline spires and organic-looking habitation zones extending in all directions. The Interstellar Academy, Renox announced, moving to stand between Jack and Krell. You're home for the next cycle. As the assembled beings moved toward viewing portals, Krell leaned close to Jack, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. This isn't over, Deathworlder. The Academy has one primary rule: no violence. It's the only thing protecting you. His mandibles spread in what passed for a smile. But rules can be navigated. Jack didn't respond to the threat. Instead, he turned his attention to the approaching station, humanity's first step into a much larger universe. The challenge ahead was greater than any he'd faced even in his years of military service. He wasn't just fighting for his own survival anymore, but for Earth's future among the stars. The Apex Survival Badge weighed heavy in his pocket, a reminder of everything he'd learned, everything he'd sacrificed, and everything now at stake. No, Jack whispered to himself, as the massive academy grew larger in the viewport. This isn't over. It's just beginning. The Interstellar Academy spanned the upper atmosphere of Harmony Station, a massive structure orbiting a blue-white star. Jack's quarters were sparse by Earth standards, but luxurious compared to military barracks he'd known. A single room with a sleeping platform study terminal and viewport offering a breathtaking vista of unfamiliar constellations. The Academy's orientation message hovered as a holographic display above his desk terminal. Rule number 1 glowed in pulsating gold. No violence of any kind is permitted within Academy grounds. The penalty for violation was immediate expulsion. Jack ran his fingers over the Apex Survival Badge, its weight comforting in his palm. The journey from Montana to this alien station had taken mere hours through technology humanity could barely comprehend. Now, as the only human over 25 in a facility housing thousands of diverse beings, he felt the burden of Earth's future settle more firmly on his shoulders. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal the reptilian female with iridescent scales he'd noticed during the confrontation with Prince Krell. Up close, her features showed subtle expressions that reminded Jack of Earth's monitor lizards, though infinitely more intelligent and nuanced. Earth representative, she greeted, her voice melodic with an undertone of soft hissing. I am Lyra of Serpenia. I've been assigned as your orientation guide. Jack nodded respectfully. Jack Reynolds, thank you for the welcome. Lyra's vertical pupils dilated slightly. Most senior representatives receive junior guides. I requested your assignment specifically. Why? Jack asked, direct as always. Curiosity. Her head tilted, scales catching the light in hypnotic patterns. Earth is classified as a death world, yet you seem, controlled, different from what the data suggested. Jack smiled faintly. We're full of surprises. They walked through corridors that seemed to blend technology with organic elements. The Academy's architecture defied Earth concepts. Gravity shifted subtly between sections, light emanated from the structure itself, and in some areas walls became transparent or permeable based on the needs of different species. The Academy houses representatives from over 300 worlds, Lyra explained. Some breathe methane, others exist partially in dimensions we cannot perceive. The environmental adaptations alone require decades of engineering. Jack absorbed the information, mentally cataloging potential allies and threats. How many other Deathworlders? Lyra's scales rippled in what might have been discomfort. Currently only one other from Earth, a human male named Marcus Chen, 26 years old, recruited from your planet's space program. He arrived 3 rotations ago. Jack's eyebrows rose slightly. Earth hadn't mentioned another representative. Interesting. Their tour brought them to the central atrium, a vast open space with multiple levels rising hundreds of meters overhead. Species from across the galaxy mingled, some flying between levels, others moving through transparent tubes filled with their native atmospheres. The diversity was staggering, yet Jack noticed patterns emerging: social groupings, hierarchies, and unmistakable politics. The scientific disciplines are housed in the upper levels. Lyra continued, pointing to crystalline structures that seemed to float unsupported. Combat ecology and predator behavior studies, your assigned specialties, are on level 47. Jack nodded, noting how conversations fell silent as they passed. Eyes, sensory organs, and appendages turned to track his movement. Not simple curiosity. This was assessment, the way predators evaluate potential threats or prey. I'm causing quite a stir, he observed quietly. Lyra's scales darkened slightly. Humans have a reputation. The Galactic archives contain records of your world's conflicts. The data suggests your species spends more time fighting itself than any external threat. Hard to argue with that, Jack admitted. They approached a gathering of students near a central information hub. Among them stood a young Asian man in an academy uniform. Marcus Chen, Jack presumed. The younger human was engaged in animated conversation with a group of small insectoid beings, his gestures enthusiastic, his expression open and friendly. As Jack and Lyra approached, Marcus turned, his expression shifting from surprise to recognition. Commander Reynolds, Marcus extended his hand in the human gesture. They didn't tell me another representative was coming. Marcus Chen, NASA astronaut candidate. Jack shook the offered hand, noting the younger man's firm grip and earnest demeanor. Former commander. These days just Jack. Seems Earth hedged its bets with 2 representatives. Marcus grinned. Can't blame them. This place is, he gestured broadly at their surroundings, beyond anything we imagined. I've been downloading everything I can about interstellar physics, sustainable ecosystems, medical advances. The knowledge here could revolutionize life on Earth. Jack studied the younger man carefully, enthusiastic, brilliant, and hopelessly naive about the politics surrounding them. How have you been treated so far? Marcus's smile faltered slightly. Mixed reactions. Some species are fascinated, others keep their distance. The Taurians are challenging. As if summoned by the mention, a familiar armored figure appeared at the atrium's central platform, flanked by similarly impressive escorts. Prince Krell surveyed the gathering, his posture radiating dominance. When his gaze landed on Jack and Marcus, his mandibles clicked in what Jack was beginning to recognize as contempt. Speaking of challenges, Jack murmured, as Krell approached. The Taurian prince stood nearly 7 feet tall, his armor plates now adorned with formal insignia denoting his royal status. The other students parted before him, some bowing slightly, others averting their sensory organs in deference. Power politics, Jack noted. Some things were universal. The Deathworlders gather, Krell announced loud enough for the entire atrium to hear. How quaint that Earth sends both its young and its elderly. Perhaps they hope one will survive. Marcus tensed beside Jack, but before the younger man could respond, Jack placed a restraining hand on his arm. Confrontation was exactly what Krell wanted. Prince Krell, Jack acknowledged with calm neutrality. I see the Academy accommodates all types of students. The Taurian's head plates flared. Indeed, even primitive species on probationary status. His attention shifted to Lyra, who had instinctively taken a step back. Serpenian, you disgrace your world by associating with these predators. Jack observed how the gathered students reacted. Many showed discomfort, but none intervened. Established patterns of intimidation then. Krell wasn't just targeting humans. He was maintaining a power structure. Orientation duty, Lyra replied, her scales flattening against her body. Academy protocol. Krell dismissed her explanation with a contemptuous gesture before refocusing on Jack. I understand you've been assigned to combat ecology and predator behavior studies. How appropriate. The predator studying itself. The barb was designed to provoke to reinforce humanity's classification as dangerous. Jack refused to take the bait. Instead, he studied Krell's armor, noting the engineering and design choices. Defense mechanisms evolved to intimidate, much like Earth's predators. Knowledge of predator behavior has helped my species survive, Jack replied evenly. I'm interested to learn how the Taurian Empire developed similar adaptations. The subtle countermove wasn't lost on Krell or the watching crowd. By recognizing Taurian evolution as predatory, a factual observation rather than an insult, Jack had redirected the conversation. Several onlookers made sounds that might have been suppressed amusement. Krell stepped closer using his height advantage deliberately. You should understand your position here, human. Earth's admission to the Alliance is opposed by 17 member worlds, including the Taurian Empire. Your presence is merely a formality before rejection. Jack maintained eye contact, his expression neutral. Then we have nothing to worry about, do we? Krell's armored hand moved suddenly not toward Jack, but to his side, where the Apex Survival badge was clipped to his uniform. Before Jack could react, Krell had snatched it, holding the badge up to examine it. What primitive token is this? He demanded. A surge of protective anger rose in Jack's chest. The badge was more than metal. It represented everything he'd sacrificed, everything Frank had taught him. But he controlled the reaction, keeping his breathing steady. No violence. Rule number 1. It's a certification badge, Jack explained calmly. Earth Survival Training Level 5. Krell examined it with exaggerated curiosity. Survival training. How appropriate for a species constantly at war with its own planet. He clipped the badge to his own armor. I believe I'll keep this as a reminder of humanity's struggle against nature itself. The atrium had gone silent. Even those who had been avoiding the confrontation now watched intently. This wasn't just theft. It was a calculated public challenge. How would the human respond to provocation? Marcus stepped forward, fists clenched. That doesn't belong to you. Jack cut him off with a slight shake of his head. The younger man didn't understand what was happening. This wasn't about a badge. It was about Earth's future. Prince Krell, Jack's voice remained level. I've been through 3 wars, lost good men, and seen what happens when pride overrides judgment. I'm asking you once respectfully to return my property. Krell's mandibles spread in what passed for a Taurian smile. Or what Deathworld or Valence is prohibited? Rules protect you here. Jack met the alien's gaze steadily. I'm not threatening violence. I'm offering you the chance to make the right choice. Something in Jack's tone, the calm certainty of a man who had faced death many times, caused a ripple of reaction among the watching students. Several stepped back, sensing the tension beneath the controlled exchange. Krell's armor plates pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Anger, perhaps, or anticipation. Your Earth diplomacy is as primitive as your technology. The badge stays with me. Consider it. Education in galactic realities. With that, the Taurian turned and strode away, his entourage following closely. The badge, Jack's badge, gleamed against the dark armor, a symbol now transformed into a trophy. The gathered crowd dispersed slowly, conversations resuming in hushed tones. Marcus turned to Jack, his expression a mixture of anger and confusion. Why didn't you stop him? That's yours. Jack watched Krell's retreating form. Because this isn't about a badge, it's about demonstrating who we are. He turned to Marcus, his expression serious. Earth can't afford a representative who responds to provocation with aggression. Not here. Lyra had remained silent during the confrontation. Now she approached cautiously. You should report this to the Academy administration. Property theft violates secondary protocols. Jack shook his head. And be immediately labeled as a species that can't handle its own problems, no. This is a test, not just from Krell, but from everyone watching. Marcus still looked unconvinced. So we just let them push us around. No, Jack replied, a hint of steel entering his voice. We choose our battles carefully. Remember why we're here, not for personal pride, but for Earth's future. As they continued the orientation tour, Jack noticed subtle changes in how others regarded him. Some kept their distance as before, but others watched with what might have been newfound respect. The confrontation had been observed, assessed, and conclusions drawn. Near the end of their tour, a small arthropoid being approached them, its multifaceted eyes darting nervously. Standing barely 4 feet tall, its exoskeleton displayed intricate patterns that shifted with its movements. Earth representative. It clicked in the common language mandibles working rapidly. I am Vex of the Arthropian Collective. I wish to, that is, your restraint was most impressive. Jack nodded in acknowledgement. Thank you, Vex. I'm Jack Reynolds. The arthropoid's antennae quivered. Prince Krell has taken items from many students. None have confronted him so directly without incident. Interesting, Jack thought. So this was established behavior not specifically targeted at humans. The badge is important to you, Vex inquired. Yes, Jack admitted, but not worth compromising Earth's position here. Vex's compound eyes reflected the atrium's lights. If you want, I could perhaps retrieve it for you. I have certain skills that... No, Jack interrupted gently. I appreciate the offer, but this is my responsibility. I'll resolve it another way. The small alien seemed both relieved and disappointed. Prince Krell plans to challenge you publicly. It is his pattern with new species representatives. To establish dominance. Jack had suspected as much. Classic predatory behavior. Identify potential rivals and neutralize them early. Thank you for the warning, Vex. As the arthropoid scuttled away, Lyra turned to Jack, her scales shifting to a concerned hue. Krell has significant political influence here. His father is the Taurian ambassador to the Alliance Council. Politics, Jack nodded. Some things are universal. That evening, Jack sat alone in his quarters reviewing the Academy's curriculum on his terminal. The scientific knowledge alone was staggering. Mathematical concepts Earth theorists hadn't even considered, biological principles that could revolutionize medicine, physics that made Earth's understanding seem primitive by comparison. A soft chime interrupted his studies. The door slid open to reveal Marcus, his expression troubled. Commander, sorry, Jack. Can I speak with you? Jack gestured to the room's only other seat. What's on your mind, Marcus? The younger man sat, his posture reflecting the military training NASA required of its astronauts. I've been here 3 rotations. I thought I was making progress, learning, building relationships. But after today, he shook his head. I realize I've been naive. This isn't just about scientific exchange, is it? No, Jack confirmed. It's about survival, Earth's survival. Marcus leaned forward. The Taurians have been lobbying against Earth's membership since before I arrived. But it's not just them. There's a faction called the Protectorate, worlds that believe Deathworlders are inherently dangerous and should be contained, not embraced. Jack nodded. And another faction that sees Earth as a resource rather than a partner, primitive enough to exploit, advanced enough to be useful. How did you know that politics follows predictable patterns? Jack replied. Fear and greed are universal motivators. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. I'm a scientist, not a diplomat. They didn't prepare me for this. That's why Earth sent both of us, Jack realized aloud. You understand the science. I understand the conflict. The younger man met his gaze. What do we do about Krell, about the badge? For now, nothing, Jack decided. We observe, we learn, and we prepare. Krell wants a reaction, an excuse to prove humans are violent and uncontrollable. We don't give him one. Marcus didn't look satisfied, but he nodded. There's something else you should know. There's a place called the Combat Training Sector, restricted area below the main academy. Rumors say Krell and his followers use it for unsanctioned fights away from administrative oversight. Jack filed the information away. Good to know, thank you. After Marcus left, Jack returned to the viewport watching the unfamiliar stars. Frank's voice echoed in his memory. Remember why we fight, Jack. Not for glory, not for vengeance, but to protect what matters. Right now, what mattered was proving humanity belonged among the stars. The Academy cafeteria resembled a biodiverse ecosystem more than a dining hall. Separate atmospheric zones accommodated methane breathers and silicon-based life forms. Gravity platforms adjusted for species from high or low gravity worlds. Food synthesizers produced nutrition tailored to wildly different biologies. Jack selected a meal that approximated Earth protein and vegetables, though the colors and textures were slightly off. He sat alone observing the social dynamics around him. 3 days had passed since his arrival, and patterns were emerging. The smaller, physically vulnerable species clustered together for safety. The Tarians and their allies dominated the central tables. Various political factions maintained their boundaries through subtle positioning. Academy staff, distinguished by their formal insignia, monitored from discrete observation points. Jack had begun attending classes in combat ecology and predator behavior fields where Earth's evolutionary history provided unique insights. His first paper, analyzing parallels between Earth apex predators and certain alliance species, had earned grudging acknowledgement from the instructor, a multi-limbed being whose species had evolved from arboreal hunters. Earth representative. The melodic voice belonged to Lyra, who approached with a tray of what appeared to be live phosphorescent insects. "May I join you?" Jack gestured to the empty seat. "Please." As she settled across from him, Jack noticed several other students watching with obvious interest. His association with the Serpenian was being noted assessed. "You've created quite a stir in Professor Zan's class," Lyra observed. "Your analysis of predatory adaptation has been shared among faculty." Jack shrugged slightly. "Earth offers a unique perspective. 3 billion years of evolution on a hostile world creates effective survival strategies." "Indeed." Lyra's vertical pupils dilated slightly. "Though some find your presence unsettling. A predator species analyzing predator behavior." "Self-awareness is the first step to growth," Jack replied. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden hush falling over the cafeteria. Prince Krell had entered with his entourage, his armor polished to a ceremonial gleam. The Apex Survival Badge, Jack's badge, hung prominently from his belt, displayed like a war trophy. Krell surveyed the room, his compound eyes settling on Jack. "Deathworlder," his voice boomed across the cafeteria. "Join us." Every eye in the room turned toward Jack. This was deliberate, a public challenge carefully calculated. Refusing would appear weak, accepting could lead to confrontation. Jack continued eating, neither acknowledging the summons nor deliberately ignoring it. A middle path. Krell's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Come now, show the Academy how fierce humans truly are." Scattered laughter rippled through the Tyrian supporters. One mimicked what they imagined was a human battle cry, over-dramatized and mocking. Jack finished his meal with deliberate calm, then stood to return his tray. His path to the disposal units would take him near Krell's table, but not directly to it, a neutral route that neither accepted nor rejected the Tarian's challenge. As he passed, a metallic clang echoed through the suddenly silent room. The Apex Survival Badge hit the floor, bouncing twice before sliding to a stop at Jack's feet. Krell's voice cut through the cafeteria. "If you want it, bow." The room froze. Students raised recording devices, eager to document the confrontation. Jack stared at the badge, allowing himself one moment of genuine emotion. Not anger, but disappointment that diplomacy had failed. Lyra stood in the doorway watching with wide eyes. Her scales had paled to an alarmed hue. Jack could read her silent warning. "He wants the reaction. Don't feed him." Jack crouched, reaching for the badge. Krell's armored boots slammed down, pinning it to the floor. The Taurian leaned forward, mandibles spreading in a predatory smile. "You're on a peaceful station. No fighting allowed," he whispered loud enough for nearby students to hear. "The rules protect you." Jack didn't look at Krell. Instead, he focused on the badge beneath the alien's foot, the symbol of everything he'd sacrificed to be here. "I'm asking you for the last time," Jack said quietly. "Move your foot." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Conversations died completely. Even the air circulation system sounded too loud in the sudden stillness. Krell leaned down further, his breath hot and alien. "Or what?" Jack straightened, meeting Krell's compound eyes. His gaze held no challenge, only clarity. "I filed a report with administration." "Yes," Krell savored the word. "And they dismissed it." Jack allowed himself a small nod. "They dismissed it because theft between students is considered a minor infraction." His voice remained level, conversational even. I wanted to give you the opportunity to resolve this honorably. Krell's armor plates pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, confusion mixed with triumph. He had expected anger, perhaps even a physical response. This calm acceptance didn't fit his understanding of Deathworlders. Jack took a small step back. I'm done speaking to you here. Something in his tone, not threat but finality, caused several nearby students to shift uneasily. Krell's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. You retreat human as expected from a species that hides behind rules. Jack's weathered face remained impassive. Next time you'll need more than rules. He turned and walked away, leaving the badge under Krell's foot. The Torian's laughter followed him, but Jack noted the uncertain undertone. This wasn't how the confrontation was supposed to end. In the corridor outside, Lyra caught up with him, her scales shifting through patterns of concern and confusion. You just left it, she said, her voice low. Everyone expected you to fight. That's exactly why I didn't. Jack continued walking, his pace unhurried. Krell wanted to prove humans are violent and unpredictable. I chose a different path. But your badge is just an object. Jack stopped turning to face her. What matters is what it represents, and that he can never take. Lyra's head tilted a gesture of curiosity. What will you do now? Jack's expression remained unreadable. Prepare. That night, Jack moved through the training hall with fluid precision. The academy allowed each species designated time slots for physical conditioning. Jack had booked a solitary session, not for exercise, but for focus. The overhead lights dimmed automatically as he worked through survival drills, rapid direction changes, obstacle vaulting, force redistribution. Each movement flowed like water, precise and economical. Years of harsh earth training had turned his body into a map of muscle memory and instinct. A door hissed open. Jack didn't break his routine. Soft footsteps approached. You move differently than other humans, Lyra observed from the edge of the training area. Marcus trains with force with impact. You move like water finding its path. Jack completed a complex sequence before responding. Different training philosophies. Lyra held a data tablet, her scales shifting nervously. I shouldn't be here, but you need to see this. She activated the tablet, projecting a holographic display. A video from the cafeteria posted on the Academy's social network. The clip looped Jack reaching for the badge, Krell pinning it, Jack warning and walking away. The comments scrolled rapidly. Deathworlder pretends to be peaceful. Humans, all talk, no action. Weakness exposed. Jack's throat tightened, not in anger but disappointment. He had tried restraint, he had tried silence. But peace required both sides to choose it, and Krell seemed determined not to. He wants you to lose control, Lyra said softly. The Torians test dominance. He thinks humiliating you gives him power. I know. What will you do? Jack answered without hesitation. I'll make him stop. Lyra stepped back uneasily. You can't fight. The rules stop violence, Jack replied quietly. They don't stop cruelty. The training hall lights flickered. Jack gathered his gear and walked to the exit, his decision made. Sometimes the hardest battles weren't fought with fists or weapons, but with principles and patience. But even patience had its limits. The next day, whispers followed Jack everywhere. He's going to challenge Krell. The humans breaking. This will prove Deathworlders don't belong. The Academy's outdoor training arena resembled an ancient gladiatorial pit. Open roof, high observation platforms, gravitational barriers for safety. Jack entered to find a crowd already gathered. Krell waited at the center, surrounded by cheering supporters. The Apex Survival badge hung prominently from his neck. Finally, the Torian prince called. The Deathworlder arrives. Jack surveyed the scene carefully. This wasn't spontaneous. Krell had planned this confrontation, ensured witnesses, created a spectacle. I didn't agree to this, Jack stated calmly. But you will, Krell replied, tapping the badge. Or it stays mine forever. A voice crackled over the arena's communication system. This is an authorized public skill demonstration. No direct strikes permitted. Jack understood instantly. Krell had found a loophole, not combat, but a demonstration. No technical violation of the rules, but the perfect opportunity to humiliate Earth's representative. The choice was clear: withdraw and concede defeat, or participate and risk escalation. Neither option served Earth's interests, unless there was a third option. Jack stepped into the ring. The arena hushed. Krell's mandibles spread in a predatory smile. "You should have bowed," he said, armor plates beginning to glow with activation patterns. The floor beneath them shifted into simulation mode. Obstacles rose, platforms moved, creating a complex terrain. A holographic timer appeared overhead. Jack rolled his shoulders, once centering himself. "You still have time to walk away." Krell lunged without warning. Jack evaded with minimal movement, just enough to avoid contact. Krell charged again. Jack redirected, using the Torian's momentum against him. When Krell swung a plated arm, claws ripping through air, Jack dipped under the attack and slid across a platform. The arena gasped collectively. Krell snarled, frustration cracking through his confidence. "Fight back." "No," Jack replied simply. "Coward." Krell attempted a takedown maneuver, but Jack pivoted, using footwork and angle control to avoid the grapple without striking back. The crowd watched in growing amazement as the pattern repeated. Krell attacked with increasing ferocity. Jack evaded with calm precision. Never striking, never violating the rules, but demonstrating something many in the audience had never considered: perfect defensive control. Krell's armor plates began to pulse with angry light. "Stand and fight, human," Jack continued his defensive strategy. Each movement economical, each evasion precise. "This isn't about fighting, it's about control." The Torian's frustration built to a breaking point. With a roar that echoed through the arena, he activated his species' biological surge system. Armor plates glowing bright red, muscles thickening visibly. Krell leapt with claws extended. Jack's survival instincts triggered. He caught Krell's arm and redirected the entire body weight into the ground with a motion so fluid it appeared impossible. No strike, no violation. Pure redirection of force. Krell hit the floor hard, wind knocked from his respiratory system. Gasps rippled through the stands. Jack stood over him, voice level. "This was your last warning." The Torian rose, trembling with rage. "You think this is over?" He leaned close enough that Jack could feel his alien breath. "Tomorrow, noon, combat training sector. No witnesses." The threat was unmistakable. "I will break you." Jack met Krell's compound eyes, calm and unflinching. "You can try." As Jack left the arena, Vex rushed to him, chitinous limbs trembling. "Stop," the arthropoid begged. "He plans to hurt you. He doesn't care if he gets expelled." Jack walked toward the elevator, expression unreadable. He made his choice. Lyra caught up to him, scales dark with concern. "And you, what choice have you made?" Jack pressed the elevator button, his weathered face set with quiet determination. "I'm done warning him." The door slid shut, leaving only silence behind. The combat training sector wasn't on any public academy maps. It lay beneath the main structure, accessible only through a restricted elevator, requiring biometric authorization. Students weren't supposed to be there without an instructor, but Krell had bypassed the security systems. Jack Reynolds stepped out of the elevator into a cavernous chamber. Polished obsidian flooring stretched across an arena larger than a football field. Adjustable gravity panels lined the ceiling, currently inactive. The air felt colder here than anywhere else on the station. Krell stood at the chamber's center, illuminated by a single overhead beam. No crowd, no witnesses, exactly as he'd planned. His armor plates shimmered with a low red pulse, indicating full combat mode. The Apex Survival Badge remained clipped to his belt, a constant reminder of the insult that had precipitated this confrontation. Jack took in the sight without reaction. Not a flicker of emotion crossed his weathered face. Years of combat experience had taught him to assess tactical situations without revealing his thoughts. "I expected you to run," Krell's voice echoed off the chamber walls. "Torians are bred for battle. Humans are bred for survival, which means hiding." Jack walked forward until he stood 10 meters away, his posture relaxed but balanced. "You chose this. I asked you to stop." "No." Krell's mandibles spread in a feral grin. "You pleaded." Jack shook his head once. "No, I warned you." The Taurian tilted his head, mandibles clicking in mockery. You think restraint is strength? You think control matters? He raised an armored hand. Today I show everyone what humans really are. The chamber's lights snapped to combat mode, dim red glow creating shifting shadows across the vast space. Krell charged without warning, moving with surprising speed for his size. 7 feet of armored alien transformed into a living battering ram, metal and flesh fused into unstoppable momentum. Jack shifted his weight and pivoted sideways, letting Krell barrel past. The Taurian didn't stumble as expected. He skidded to a controlled stop, turning with practiced aggression to face Jack again. He lunged immediately, closing the distance. Jack sidestepped the motion, barely a whisper of movement. Krell's armored fist struck the floor where Jack had been standing. Obsidian panels cracked under the impact. Jack kept his breathing steady, oxygen consumption minimized. You're exhausting yourself. Fight. Krell roared, frustration evident in the pulsing patterns of his armor. No. That single word hit Krell harder than any physical blow. His compound eyes flashed with rage. He attacked again, swinging a plated arm in a crushing arc. Jack ducked, slid behind him, and touched only the back of Krell's gauntlet, redirecting rather than resisting. The Taurian's own force carried him forward into a support column. Krell snarled, genuine fury replacing tactical aggression. You refuse to engage because you can't win. I refuse, Jack said calmly, because I don't want to hurt you. Something broke in the Taurian prince. With a guttural sound that the universal translators couldn't process, he activated additional armor enhancements. Serrated spines extended from his forearms and shoulders. He lunged in a straight line, full power, both arms extended, with claws deployed. The impact would shatter bone. Jack felt his combat instincts flare, sharp, fast, cold. Too close. The training with Frank took over. He dropped beneath Krell's charge and swept the alien's leg from under his center of mass. Krell crashed to the floor but rolled immediately, coming up in a fighting stance. His compound eyes registered something new as he studied Jack. The first flicker of uncertainty. How did you turn? Earth teaches its children not to die, Jack said quietly. Krell inhaled sharply, circling Jack with new wariness. His armor plates lifted, revealing additional serrated spines beneath. You are quick, the Taurian acknowledged, but I am stronger. Jack didn't move, maintaining neutral positioning. Strength without purpose is just force. Krell roared, activating his final biological augmentation, an adrenal surge that forced his muscles beyond safe limits. His body expanded visibly with raw power. His compound eyes glowed in unnatural gold. He vanished from Jack's field of vision. Enhanced speed. Jack pivoted instinctively, decades of combat reflexes engaging. Krell reappeared behind him, claws descending toward his throat. No time to redirect, no space to dodge. The Academy had one rule: no violence. Krell had abandoned it. Jack's restraint broke. His training hadn't come from gymnasiums or sports arenas. It came from Earth, the forest where predators stalked silently, the cliffside where a single mistake meant death, the ocean where currents tried to pull the body apart. Humans learned to survive without conscious thought. His body reacted before his mind fully processed the threat. Jack's hands snapped to Krell's wrist, fingers pressing along a precise nerve cluster. A twist, small, economical, redirected the alien's momentum away from his throat. Krell's claws froze inches from Jack's neck, suddenly paralyzed. His compound eyes widened in shock. What did you Deathworld reflex, Jack said simply. We don't overpower predators. We outthink them. He tightened his grip fractionally. Krell's knees buckled. Jack released him immediately, stepping back to create distance. Krell stumbled backward, disoriented. His breathing turned, shallow armor plates dulling as his augmentation systems struggled to compensate for the nerve disruption. He tried to stand tall again, mandibles clicking in determination. Jack moved first, smooth as liquid, catching Krell in a shoulder lock that redirected all his considerable force toward the ground. The Taurian hit the obsidian floor hard enough to dent it. The chamber sensors detected lethal force activation from Krell and responded automatically. Gravitational anchors hummed beneath the floor. Drones activated overhead. A warning blared, combat escalation detected. Security deploying. Krell lifted his head, armor plates dimming further. "No," he rasped. "I am stronger." Jack stood over him completely still. His voice remained quiet, not cruel, not triumphant. "You mistook peace for weakness." The security drones descended, surrounding them in a sphere of monitoring devices. Krell shoved himself up with one last burst of anger, lunging straight at Jack. Jack exhaled softly. This had gone far enough. His right hand lifted. Two fingers touched the center of Krell's chest, just enough to disturb his balance. A burst of compression rippled outward. Not force. Absence of force. A displacement shock triggered by redirecting inertia. The technique was banned in most combat disciplines because it required perfect timing and perfect control. Smoke erupted around Krell's body, not from fire but from air displacement, tearing moisture apart at the molecular level. The Taurian vanished. Silence descended. The smoke cleared slowly. Where Krell had stood, there was nothing. No blood, no body, just the Apex survival badge resting at Jack's feet. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Security officers arrived, weapons drawn. Academy instructors rushed in behind them. "What happened, or where is the Taurian heir?" demanded a multi-limbed security chief. Jack bent down and picked up the badge. He clipped it gently back onto his sleeve where it belonged. "He'll wake up in the medical wing," he said calmly. The displacement field moved him. He nodded toward the ceiling. "Check biocontainment, chamber 3. That's where the field defaults to." The security team stared at him. "You transported him." "Only because he kept attacking." Jack's tone remained level. "I asked him to stop." Hours later, Krell lay in a medical pod, trembling despite the advanced healing technology surrounding him. His armor had retracted completely. His spines lay flat against his body. Sensors tracked his elevated heart rate and erratic neural patterns. An academy medical instructor attempted to calm him, but Krell kept shaking his head, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. "She didn't move," he repeated. "She didn't even look angry. She just ended it." The instructor corrected gently. "The human is male." "The human," Krell whispered. "I attacked a predator that chooses not to hunt." Jack left the medical wing quietly. The corridor outside was empty except for Lyra, who waited with eyes wide and scales pale with concern. "Is it over?" she asked. Jack nodded once. "Yes." "What will you tell the council that you won?" No," Jack said, continuing down the corridor. "That there was no fight because victory wasn't the point." He had never wanted to win. He only wanted Krell to stop. The summons came before dawn by Earth Reckoning. A single line blinked on Jack's datapad. "Report to the Interspecies Tribunal Chamber." Jack stood in the empty hallway outside his quarters and took one controlled breath. He had slept barely an hour, not from fear, but because his mind needed stillness after confrontation. His badge sat secure on his sleeve once more, its weight familiar and comforting. The tribunal chamber was a massive circular hall with tiered rows of delegates, raised podiums of polished obsidian, and banners of countless worlds hanging like silent judges. When Jack entered, conversations immediately ceased. The gallery overflowed with students, instructors, diplomats, and security personnel. Recording devices captured his every step. The doors sealed behind him. A console illuminated at the chamber's center, the speaker's platform. Jack stepped onto it without hesitation. Sensors scanned him, projecting his vital signs above the chamber. His heart rate remained perfectly calm, blood pressure, optimal respiration, steady. The readings themselves became testimony. A voice boomed from the upper balcony, High Arbiter Jen, the obsidian-skinned leader who had first greeted Earth's delegation. Beside him sat Judge Renox, golden eyes fixed intently on Jack. "Human Reynolds," Jen declared formally, "you stand accused of violating Rule 1 of the Interstellar Academy. How do you respond?" Jack held his gaze upward. "Rule 1 forbids violence. I redirected a student into a displacement field." "To protect yourself," Renox added. "To prevent worse harm," Jack countered. Whispers moved through the crowd like wind through prairie grass. Jack could distinguish snippets of different languages, some questioning, others supporting. Renix raised a hand for silence. "The Taurian heir claims you attacked without provocation." Jack remained perfectly steady. He had learned at age 12, when cornered by a mountain lion near a ravine in Montana, the critical difference between truth and reaction. Truth does not tremble. I issued warnings repeatedly. He escalated. High Arbiter Jen leaned forward. You could have left and reported the incident. And rewarded cruelty, Jack responded. What precedent does that set for every species smaller or weaker than him? The gallery stirred at that. A representative from the Arthropian delegation whispered to another, he stood where every frightened student wishes they could. Jen glanced down at his console. Our security recordings show you never struck Prince Krell. You never broke Rule 1 by strict definition. Peace requires accountability. Jack didn't move, didn't blink. Not just rules. Rennox challenged him directly. You displaced him across 2 sectors. He survived. And if he had not, the golden eyes narrowed. Jack answered with quiet certainty. I would carry that burden. Silence fell. Not fear this time, but respect. The tribunal members exchanged glances, something unspoken passing between them. Rennox shifted his attention to a medical pod at the chamber's side. The cover slid back, revealing Krell. The Taurian prince stood unsteadily. His armor removed his compound eyes still dull from sedation. Prince Krell of the Taurian Empire, Rennox addressed him formally. You may address the tribunal. Krell stepped forward, his usual imposing presence diminished without his armor. His mandibles moved hesitantly before he spoke. I attacked him. The admission sent ripples of surprise through the gallery. I lost not to strength. Krell continued, voice strained. To restrain, I used my augmentations. He only used skill and control. He did not injure me. He protected me from myself. Jack blinked, not because he needed confirmation, but because hearing it aloud mattered. High Arbiter Jen studied both of them thoughtfully. Then why summon this hearing? Krell lifted an arm, revealing a small data chip. To ask for something unusual. Jen's obsidian brow lifted. A request. Krell swallowed visibly, every movement straining against pride built over a lifetime. Teach me. The gallery erupted in whispers. Jack's expression remained neutral, but his mind raced with the implications. Teach you what? He asked. Krell faced Jack fully, not as a conqueror, not as an adversary, but as something entirely new. A student. How you stayed calm when I wanted war. The Taurian inhaled deeply, mandibles working. I want to learn what humanity calls restraint, because power without control is just chaos. The tribunal members leaned toward each other, murmuring in languages too complex for the universal translators. This wasn't a hearing anymore. It had become precedent. Rennox finally spoke. Reynolds, you did not break Rule 1. You enforced its spirit. He pressed a ceremonial seal. The display pulsed gold. The human is cleared of all accusations. The chamber erupted, not in applause, but in something deeper. Recognition. Jack descended from the podium. Students parted as he walked through the crowd. Some watched with awe, some with lingering fear, but many with something new understanding. Lyra rushed to his side, scales bright with excitement. You changed things. People saw a restraint as strength. Jack offered a small, tired smile. Peace is harder than fighting. Most don't choose the harder path, Lyra murmured. Jack shrugged slightly. Earth trains us to choose what costs more. Why? Later, in a quiet rooftop garden overlooking the vast expanse of stars, Jack finally allowed himself to sit. His body ached from the confrontation. At 58, even redirecting force took its toll. The garden smelled of alien flora, sweet and strange, but the air tasted clean. He sensed someone approach before he heard them. Permission to sit? Krell asked. Jack gestured to the bench beside him. The Taurian sat carefully, without armor, without weapons. No swagger remained in his posture, only sincerity. I never saw a fight end without one side falling, Krell said after a moment of silence. Jack studied the star field visible through the transparent dome. Then learn a different ending. Krell hesitated. Can you train me? Jack turned to face him, voice gentle but firm. I won't teach you to win fights. I'll teach you to avoid needing them. The Taurian nodded slowly, compound eyes reflecting starlight. What was that technique, the one that displaced me? A Deathworld response. Jack answered plainly. Humans learned long ago that it's easier to redirect force than to oppose it. Every predator is strongest when lunging. All I did was give your force somewhere else to go. Krell stared at him. You didn't overpower me. No, Jack met his gaze. I let you defeat yourself. The Taurian lowered his head mandibles close to his body in what Jack was learning to recognize as humility. I wanted to break you, Krell admitted. Instead, you made me see myself. Jack stood, feeling the weight of his years and the promise of tomorrow. Then the lesson is learned. Krell didn't reach for him. He didn't block his path. He simply said thank you. Jack nodded once and walked away, leaving the former adversary in the soft hum of the garden lights. That night, Jack returned to his quarters. He removed the Apex Survival Badge and placed it beside his bed. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that power isn't proven through force, but through choice. His datapad chimed with an incoming message. Professor Zan, his instructor in combat ecology, requested a meeting. Not as student and teacher, but as colleagues. The message contained an attachment, a preliminary research paper Jack had submitted on Earth, predator adaptation strategies, had been forwarded to the Alliance Scientific Council with a recommendation for formal publication. A second message followed Marcus Chen requesting permission to attend Jack's newly formed study group on restraint techniques and applications. A third message arrived from Judge Renox. Earth's evaluation period has been accelerated based on exceptional circumstances. Preliminary findings favorable. Continue your work, Commander. Jack smiled slightly. Not a victory, not yet, but progress.
Part-time.
The Academy quietly changed its policy the next day. Posted on every information terminal throughout the station, Rule 1 updated violence will not be tolerated, neither will bullying. Underneath smaller text, courtesy of Earth Delegate Jack Reynolds. Jack passed it on his way to his first teaching session. He didn't stop. He didn't need validation. As he reached the classroom door, a small, hesitant voice called out, Jack! Vex stood in the corridor, no longer trembling, standing taller than Jack had seen before. Thank you, the arthropoid said simply, for showing that peace is not weakness. Jack smiled, genuine and warm. Real peace is a choice. Strength is making it twice. He entered the classroom not as a curiosity, not as a Deathworlder, but as someone who had proven something no one expected. Humanity hadn't conquered the Academy. They had changed it. 6 months later, Jack stood on the observation deck with his students, Krell, Marcus, Lyra, Vex, and representatives from a dozen other worlds. Below them, the first official Earth delegation approached the Academy in a newly designed ship incorporating Alliance technology with human innovation. They're integrating your displacement field technology into non-weapon systems. Krell noted, his understanding of human intention growing with each passing day. Jack nodded. Transportation, emergency medicine, disaster response. Force redirection has many applications beyond combat. Lyra's scales shimmered with excitement. And you've been appointed to the Academy's permanent faculty. First human instructor in history. The art of restraint is already the most requested course in the curriculum, Marcus added. We've come a long way in 6 months. Jack watched the approaching Earth vessel. The journey had been unexpected. From disgraced commander to security guard to humanity's representative among the stars. Now he had found a new purpose, teaching the lessons Earth had learned through millennia of survival on a Deathworld. It's just the beginning, he said quietly. Judge Renox joined them, his ceremonial robes replaced by the simpler garb of an Academy administrator. The Alliance Council votes tomorrow on Earth's full membership status. The outcome looks favorable. Jack met those golden eyes that had once judged him. And the Taurian Empire's position. Renox's mouth formed what Jack now recognized as a smile. Ambassador Krell Sr. has withdrawn his opposition. I believe his son's education has been influential. Krell ducked his head in what might have been embarrassment. My father is adapting to new perspectives. The Earth vessel docked with the Academy. New human representatives would arrive. Scientists, diplomats, students eager to learn. Jack had opened the door, but they would build the bridge. What next for you, Commander? Renox asked. Jack looked at his students, once adversaries and strangers, now something approaching friends. His hand rested on the Apex Survival Badge that had started this journey. Frank Harlow taught me that survival isn't just about living through danger. It's about finding meaning beyond the struggle. He smiled slightly. I think I'll keep teaching. Below them, the airlock opened. Earth's new representatives stepped into the academy, tentative, nervous, filled with wonder. Jack remembered his own arrival, how alien everything had seemed. "They'll need guidance," Marcus observed. Jack nodded. "That's what experience is for." As they moved to greet the newcomers, Jack felt a sense of completion. He had come to the academy expecting to prove humanity's worth through endurance. Instead, he had demonstrated humanity's greatest strength, the wisdom to choose peace when every instinct demanded war. Earth would join the stars not as conquerors or subjects, but as teachers, a Deathworld species that had learned to master not just its environment, but itself. The Apex Survival Badge caught the light as Jack extended his hand to the first wide-eyed human stepping through the airlock. "Welcome to the Academy," he said. "Let me show you what we've learned."